We've all heard of Machiavelli, that master manipulator, that crafter of cunning, that doctor of deceit, whose treatise to a prince to teach him how to grasp and hold on to power with ruthless efficiency in a dangerous world has been studied for generations. But did you know there is a much more shrewd observer of human nature than Machiavelli, whose name not many people even know, and yet his wisdom dwarfs that of Machiavelli in breadth and in depth. Instead of being like Machiavelli and spending pages talking about state politics, or problems which no one today will face even in principle, like what to do when capturing a city, or spending reams talking about the history of the Borgias, this writer, this observer, speaks to us in maxims, practical, workable, direct and blunt commands that help you navigate the constant psychological wars that we face each day in our life. So if you're looking for a manual to help you know what to do in the multifaceted interactions that we go through, whether at work or in family or in school or in friendship groups or just meeting strangers, if you want to know the invisible mechanics of why some people are on the inside, always invited, always called for, always sought after, if you want to know why some people make brilliant confidants, why people stop and listen to them and take what they have to say seriously rather than dismiss it, then you will want to put down Machiavelli and you will want to pick up Baltasar Gracian. This is The Art of Worldly Wisdom, written by the Spanish priest Baltasar Gracian in 1647 in Spain. Now, you might wonder, what does a priest know about power and about establishing one's reputation and holding favour in a tricky and psychological battle of wits? Well, he wasn't just any priest. He was a Jesuit priest. The Jesuit priesthood in the 17th century were the intellectual SAS of the day. They studied Greek, they studied Latin, they studied theology, they studied philosophy, they studied statecraft. All over Europe at this time, you would find Jesuit priests embedded into the machinery of the state, whether that be in royal courts or advisors to highly significant and powerful people, or in parliament, or in judiciary and administrative matters. These men went beyond just crafting piety, but also becoming worldly wise to shape the state that they were in. Don't think Gracian was cloistered away somewhere praying. He lived in the Spanish Golden Age. Spain was the mightiest power in Europe. This was a time of magnificent decay. On the surface, the Spanish court was all glamour and empire and South American gold, but underneath it was a viper pit of spies, social climbers, sycophants, rival families and intrigue. Baltasar Gracian was a chaplain in this war zone. Daily, weekly, he would see the good and the naive chewed up and spat out because they played by honourable rules, expecting the world to play by the same rules, but they didn't. And so Gracian writes a worldly wise book, a book that doesn't teach you how to be good. The Bible does that. It teaches you how not to be stupid. And the psychological insights he makes to guide people's decisions, to get them firmly within themselves, to understand how people operate, how everything can be a mask, people putting on pretense and hiding their true motives. Those things haven't changed in humanity for all time and are still with us today. That's what makes his work so powerful. The first thing that strikes you about this book when you open it is just how dense it is. Now, don't let that worry you. This isn't density of heavy jargon, convoluted sentences, meandering paragraphs that go on for pages and pages, a lot of jargon. It's not like that. It's content heavy. It is one pearl of wisdom after another, insight after insight after insight just keep hitting you. Unlike many treatises, including Machiavelli's, which is, by the way, very brilliant and very rich, a treatise will give you background information. It will develop the thought quite extensively. It may give you historic details. It may give you military strategy and tactics. But Gracian talks to you directly in maxims. Now, it's really important to remember what a maxim is. It's different to an aphorism, which is a more generalized observation of a truth about life as a whole, and are very, very valuable. A maxim is more direct. It is a command. It is a do this, don't do that. Because he was writing a guidebook for good people, sometimes naive people, to be able to strip away all the veneer of what's going on, what people are presenting to them, the mask as it's called, and see exactly what people are really doing, and to protect oneself from being manipulated, and to improve one's trustworthiness or one's usefulness to others, to really get the psychology. When you read his maxims, what strikes you is how stark they are, how to the point, almost cynical, some say. Because if you think because he's a priest he's going to be nice, I'll give you some dark philosophers who loved his work more than anyone else. Arthur Schopenhauer learned Spanish in order to read this book and to translate it into German. Nietzsche said, "In the experience of life, Gracian shows incomparable wisdom and clear-sightedness." That's some really high acclaim. The reason he was so on the money with his comments was he was the master of the form called Conceptismo. The goal of Conceptismo is to pack the maximum amount of meaning into the minimum amount of words. It's high distillation of information. In the Baroque period, this was the ultimate flex. It was a proof of competence. If you needed 3 pages to explain a concept, you were considered sloppy. If you could do it in 1 sentence, you were an absolute master. And this is why Nietzsche admired him so much. Nietzsche himself said that it was his ambition to write in just 10 pages what it would take others an entire book to write. This is why Schopenhauer loved him. He didn't waste any of your time describing the fortress. He simply gave you the weapons and said, be at it. So now what I want to do is just share with you a couple of his maxims so you get an idea of just how potent this work is. Do not show your wounded finger, for everything will knock up against it. Now that's the maxim itself, and he has a little bit more explanatory notes afterwards. But think about the practicality of that today. We live in a time of almost a vulnerability cult in some respects, that the more you show your feelings, the more vulnerable you present yourself, somehow the more respected and well treated you will be. Gracian is saying that's not true, particularly in high stakes environment. He's saying, like a wounded finger, if it's not bandaged up, it tends to catch on everything and hurts you. Likewise, where you show what hurts you the most is where malicious people will target and even clumsy people will bump into. So in practical terms, think of it like this. If you were to always be complaining of how poorly you are, then people will just think you're down, maybe miserable eventually, and sick. If you talk about how tired you are all the time, people will begin to think of you as weak. If you complain about your boss and difficult things at work all the time in your conversation, people are going to think of you as an easily rattled person. Now, what kind of confidant, for instance, would you normally select from your group of friends? Is it not the one who has composure? Well, If you've been going round with your wounded finger exposed, catching it on everything, telling everyone all of your vulnerabilities all of the time, do you see how this gradually embeds into their psychology of how to think of you? Do you see the genius of this maxim? This is timeless. It has never changed. What Gracian does is he's gathered it in Conceptismo, the most distilled form, and said to you, there, take that and now use it. How about Maxim 222, which many of us could learn to do better? Reserve is proof of prudence. The tongue is a wild beast. Once let loose, it is difficult to chain. It is the pulse of the soul by which wise men judge of its health. By this pulse, a careful observer feels every movement of the heart. And he just briefly goes on to mention that the worst is that the person most in need of reserve is the one that doesn't have any. We can reveal stupidity by talking too much. And there's so much more that we can talk about from this book. There are 300 maxims that Gracian gives us, and they are all so insightful. For instance, the one that talks about not giving satisfaction to completion, because then you're not needed. He says, when you've satisfied your thirst, you turn your back on the well. And he talks about in certain settings, you could think of career and work here, when you give everything you have and have satisfied every request, you're no longer needed. And he knows that other people think like this. Now, you may be worried that this is cynical, that it's just pure manipulation. Well, it sounds like it because of how bluntly it's expressed. Remember, he's capturing the essence of it. But Gracian does know we're human beings. He's not saying we have to cynically apply all of these in every setting. He wrote the book for good people, naive people, so that they would not be stupid, that they would not be taken advantage of, that they could actually be smart, to see beneath the surface, and especially see within themselves how they actually appear to other people. Because the world, he knew, is full of pits and traps and jealousies and envies and strifes. And to know how to navigate them is only beneficial. If you want to get your hands on the book, The Art of Worldly Wisdom by Gracian, feel free to use my Amazon link below in the description, where if you go there, I'll get a small affiliate payment, which helps support the channel. It's not much, but it's something. Have you read this book before? Have you heard of it? Let me know down in the comments below. And until the next time, I wish you joy in whatever you read.